Hi, my name's Cheri. Welcome to my stamp studio. Today I have a fun card for you, and I am going to kind of tell you the progression of some of the, it's a weird world we're living in, and we're making the best of it. And as creatives, we create. So I've been on kind of a, not different, because I like to do different things with my stamps, but I'll tell you how I got to this card and then kind of some of the funs that go around it. So you may have seen this one. If you haven't, you might want to go take a look at it. This is a card that I created using this die here as a template for my watercolor pencils. So I cut this out, made a little stencil, and then I stenciled this. So then I thought, well, I'm going to do that with some of my other stencils. So I did pull this one out, and I did this, and I liked it. But to be honest, it's kind of a lot of work, and I wasn't quite sure that I liked it enough for the amount of work that it was. I mean, it's cute, and I will give it to somebody. I thought about sending it to my niece for her birthday, but I already had a different card picked out for her. But let me show you the template. I have it stuck over here. So, it's this one, and it's kind of a little bit, it's tedious because it moves. So it's cute. So I thought, well, I'll just, I have so many dies, I'll pick another die. So I picked this one because this is beautiful, and I haven't used it a whole lot. So when you run it through, spatial stuff, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a mathematician, because I don't find joy in that. So when you cut it out, it does this. Yeah, these are whole. There's no way that you are going to use these for any kind of stencil, because that's not the way the die cuts. So when I see this, I didn't really think about the fact that these were whole. Like if I'd taken 2 seconds other than seeing it hanging up and thinking, oh, those flowers would be pretty as a stencil. So yeah, that didn't work. But once I cut this out, I decided, well, new plan, because I do want to use this. So I made it, and it actually comes in 2 pieces. And so I did all of the painting, which you'll see. And so I was left with these. And then because it's been so long since I've used it, I went to get the words, and it's designed so these smaller words, which here, I'll show you this way. So you can kind of see how sometimes we create, and it's because my life sometimes these days. Yesterday when I was doing this, my husband was working from home. He is still working from home, but he's had to run up to the hospital real quick. So I have a little bit to film. So when he's here, it's kind of a constant interruption. I don't know if I know those of you who are homeschooling right now, while being the teacher and not really the teacher, or, if you have other people working from home, and normally you're not at home with other people, can understand. So, it's just the in and out. So I didn't think to get these first. So only the best wishes on your joyful day and sharing in your sorrows. Well, I didn't want to make a wedding card, and I didn't want to, I don't like to make sympathy cards. It's like, I don't know. I like to have them on hand. So sometimes at camp we make them, and that they can just have a stash of them. But I don't like to create them because it feels morbid, especially right now. So that meant I had this beautiful little piece that I'd already painted, and you're going to see what I ended up doing. So then I was left with the big words. So then I read the big words in the set. As it stands, it was one of my best friends. It was her anniversary yesterday. So in this era of reading, our sentiments, because sometimes we don't read the sentiments because we like happy birthdays and we like all of the happy things. So it was her anniversary. So this is really a sympathy wedding set, but this is fun if you've been married for a million years. Hoping you can find strength for today and peace in tomorrow. So if you have somebody that's celebrating a 25th, a 30th, a 50th anniversary, that's kind of a fun twist. On a sympathy card, hoping you can find strength for today and peace in tomorrow. Because when I sent them to him, I'm like, are these COVID sayings? Because, now we have some new ones. So I went with this. It actually is meant to be a wedding sentiment, but we're going to use it for Mother's Day or spring, or just for somebody that you haven't seen for a long time. But especially if you haven't seen your mama for a while, this is a great sentiment. Here's to always finding joy in one another's laughter, warmth in one another's embrace, and love in one another's lives. It's really meant to be a wedding thing, and it goes with best wishes on your joyful day. But if you haven't seen anybody, these sentiments bring on a whole new meaning. So we're going to, here's always finding joy in one another's laughter, warmth in one another's embrace, and love in another's lives. So the people that you've been living with day in and day out, the same people in your house, you might choose this one. the ones that you haven't been able to see and you dearly miss, you can go for that one. So let's see how I went from a completely different card that I intended to make because I had beautiful pieces. So in order to use the beautiful piece, I did have to emboss a piece of vellum. I'm going to do that first just so I don't get the piece of paper dirty. And here's the deal. I didn't want to emboss it, but the only way you could see my beautiful artwork underneath was to emboss it. So my first card isn't perfect because I stamped it first with Memento, which does work. Here's a tip when you're embossing on vellum. I'm going to line this up with my lines on my grid paper. And I have used this little thing here. I've actually been baking hot cross buns downstairs with sourdough because it's 2020 and I don't want to use any more yeast than necessary. They do have some yeast in them. But first time ever for some sourdough inspired hot cross buns. So I'm going to use Memento. And without the non-stick powder, I had actually mounted this to my card and then I'm like, yeah, you can't read that anymore. It needed the embossing to be a strong enough black. And then this is just going to go right here in the center. So this just kind of helps me see where the center is on these lines. But now with the powder, I won't have quite as long. Let me get this out of the way before I get dirty. That's all the stamping this card's going to need. It's a beautiful font too, obviously, because it's meant to be for weddings and funerals. And then I just have plain black embossing powder. So, you know, sometimes you may think that those of us that do these videos have like this really thought out design process. Not always the case. Sometimes you're left with something really pretty and you're like, I'm not going to waste this, but I really don't know what to do with it. And I did want to use the stamp set that comes with. This one's going to be much prettier than my other one because I had touched it when I stamped it and kind of, you know, I glued it to my card already and then I had to pull it off. So there was more than one fingerprint, so it's got a little bit of black around it. But you know, it's that time of year where we're getting close to retiring stuff. I'll flip that over. And on the off chance that this retires, I did want to use the stamp set a couple more times because I haven't used it a lot. So I'm just going to heat this up. And now this will make it a nice strong black, which will hold itself, the design that's underneath it. You'll be able to see. And it's actually a great saying. And anybody that you miss, it's a really great saying for somebody that you haven't seen for a while, which in this case, we haven't seen a lot of people for a long while. So now we've got that out of the way. Now let's run these dies through that I thought that I was going to be able to use for a stencil. So don't feel bad if you're like me and sometimes we're just spatially challenged. That's why, you know, if you watch my videos, when I get new dies, I put them all on just a sheet of scrap paper and run them all through because frankly, when I see the dies, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do. But it's been a minute since I've used these and I just totally forgot what they do. So this one I'm going to lay, I have it cut just to the size of the oval. And then this one's designed to go here. So you can leave a big background or it can use the scrap paper that's in the middle. And this is shimmery white. So that was why I wanted to use it. Plus I thought I was going to have all these beautiful pieces to stencil. And then it also comes with this little piece here that I'm not using. That again would cut that oval out of the middle. But I'm not going to use that. So then you just put this on here. And that way you get the most out of your cardstock. And we're also going to get the most out of this. And I'm going to run this through twice. And that's going to be plenty, but you do need to make sure it cuts pretty well the first time, so you don't want it to pop apart. That's why I didn't roll it all the way through until it popped. And you can see everything's coming out. So just smooth that. I was pretty certain when I saw this start to pull apart, I'm like, yeah, that's not what I had in mind. And that little blue bit of paper that I did. You need to be gentle because these can catch on themselves. Pop that out first. And then you have this piece here, but you can see how these, I just want to pull this scrap bit out here. So there's no kind of stencil unless you're planning on stenciling this hot mess. So most of them have popped out. The only things that just need a little gentle nudge, and most of them come out pretty easy. But it's just these pieces inside these leaf things here. And you could use a brush, and probably one pass would get them. But it also might bend these, and I don't want them to bend. It's just a really pretty lacy design. And you can see they're just falling out. Got them all. Pretty, pretty. Same with these. They have the same little lacy things over here, and they just pop out. So nothing in it stuck. It just needs a little gentle nudge. So had I designed my card before I took the time to paint this, it might have not been the card that I ended up with, but because I'd taken all the time, and then I thought, well, maybe I'll make 2 cards. And then I thought, no, I won't. That piece would have just laid here till the end of time, painted, and eventually made its way to the trash can. Or the rubbish bin, depending on where you're watching from. Okay, so I had these 2 pieces, and then I thought, well, I still really had wanted to work with my watercolor pencils because that's what I started with. But because they're so delicate, you can see there's not a whole lot of paper. Really pretty, but delicate. So I decided to go with one of my favorite things, which are our pigment sprinkles. And I like to sprinkle them, but it gets a bit wild. And, you know, this is, to me, this is too pretty of a design to be wild. So you just take them. And here is the granny apple green. I still have plenty in there. Here's some purple, and here it is gorgeous grape. And then I can use a little bit more yellow. So I chose, there's 2 yellows in it. There's mango and daffodil. So you just open the lids. And I love this little tray. It's just, it's exclusively for these, so I never clean it up. And then I have, and they can just stay in there until the next time I use them. I just put it up because if anything touches it. This is an empty. Nope, this isn't the one I used yesterday. Because that has brown on it. Where's the one I used yesterday? I thought that looked kind of dirty. Let me find another one because I have tons of them. You can see I mark them. Here's one. So these are just empty Stellas. And then here is a one of our shimmer paints, and this is the Champagne Mist. So you're just going to work with what's in the lid. Then I'm going to start with the green. You just need to get a little bit of paint on here. And the secret is a little bit. If you get too much, then you end up with a gloppy mess. You just need enough to make your thing wet. And I'm going to do all these lacy bits in green. And I'm going to paint till my, till it's not green anymore. That way I have different shades of green. And once it's not green, again, tiny, tiny bit. Tiny, tiny bit. Because if you get a glomp, it's not pretty. And it also gets all in your paintbrush and it's hard to get out. Tiny bit. And if you get this, the pigment sprinkles first and put it in here, then eventually it gets into your paint. But you can see, depending on what color, because you know the pigment sprinkles, if you haven't worked with them, every time you kind of sprinkle with them, they're all just a little bit different colors. So depending on where I hit in there, I get a little bit different color of green. And then as I work it out, it lightens up. So again, a tiny, tiny bit. Tiny, tiny bit. That one's gonna have a whole bunch, so it's gonna be much greener. So I'm gonna kind of work it. The other thing is you can do this on top of a piece of scrap cardstock, because what's left underneath you're gonna see is really pretty. And you can use it for a fun, funky background on something if you want, which I should have done that, but this was laying here from before. Okay, so I'm back. So you can see I've done all of the green, and then I did the yellow, and now I'm adding the purple. And with the purple, there isn't a lot, so I'm making sure that when I do it, it's the gorgeous grape, that I'm adding a bunch, just so it really shows up. So I'm just getting a bunch of the color and letting it be super, super grape. It's really pretty. You can see how all of the I like the way that the yellow, depending on how, like when I first start, it's really, really yellow. And then as you color it out, it becomes paler. And I really wanted a way to have more than 2 colors on here. And I think these do look like they're little buds. I've never gone back to the catalog really to see what they did with this for their designs, because I was kind of committed by the time this project started. So there we go. It doesn't take long. And then when you're done with this, you just squiggle this off, which is not what happened with the last one that was used, and that's why it's still a little brown. And then you can either, you'll want to take this and take a tissue and wipe it out, or just not shake it, which I'm going to not take the tissue right now. And I'll do that before I remember to shake it, so I'm not going to do it on camera. And then this, you just set it aside and then you keep using it. When I use my yellows, I just try to do 2 different, there's 6 colors. So the pinks go in here, and then I have blues when I use them over there. And then occasionally you can just wipe that out as well. Any kind of little glass container works. So this, you can see as you lift it up, if you've done this on a piece of scrap, you could kind of move that and move that in there, and that would be really pretty too to use as a background. So this just takes a second to dry. And then I have a piece of Granny Apple Green and Highland Heather. I think it's Highland Heather. I don't think that's grape. So fold this in half. And then I was torn because I wasn't quite sure, like exactly, I didn't know whether to put some, there was a lot going on, and but it needed something. It looked a little bit too 1990s for me, you know, and didn't know if I needed a folder. There wasn't any really place for some ribbon on it. So I kind of left it. I literally let this card sit overnight. And then when I came back in this morning, I'm like, yeah, it still really needs ribbon, but there wasn't a place to tie the ribbon, but the sides of the card were too flat. So here's what I did. I took my favorite ribbon, which does have a right and a wrong side, the tulle, which you can see if you're up close, that that's definitely the side, the underside of the ribbon. And here's the right side. So I just decided I wanted ribbon on it, but not tied on it. So now you don't have to tie it, and it doesn't look, the edge of your card doesn't look quite so flat. So just lay this. If you're ribbon tie challenge with bows, this is perfect for you. And so you still get the green, and now you're gonna get some texture, and the card didn't look quite so flat because it just looked, there's just something to me that, and it's because I've been doing this for so long, that when the edges of the sides of my card just are all layer, 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 it just feels like 1996 to me, because that's all we could do. So every single card that we made had that. So not that there's anything wrong with it. I just like to do a little bit something more. And this was perfect because you can see now you still have the green, and I didn't have to run it through an embossing folder, but I still have the texture. So if you don't have an embossing machine and you want some texture, this is a nice second. All ribbons wouldn't work. This one works because it's see-through. So now we still get the green, but we have that. So we're gonna take this, and this is gonna go in here, but this is going to be highlighted under it. So I'm gonna take just a tiny fraction here and make sure that's kind of lined up with the words, and you don't see it, but then it also needs to be lined up here. Like this. So once you're sure everything's kind of lined up, then you can work with it. So as long as everything's centered, but it depended that I got my words kind of in the right place, so I wanted to start with that. So now we can put this, and the edges, none of the edges of this are going to show. Actually, let's put it here, because it's all going to get covered up by our frame. So center this. Put this on. And there I had saved my little piece, and you can still see it. That's why I wanted to make sure that all the colors were bright, and I put a ton of purple on that. Get my scrap paper over here again. Okay, so it's still a tiny bit wet. The pigment sprinkles dry pretty fast, but that's some pretty fast drying time we've given it right there. Oh, it was dry. I was afraid that when I pressed on it. And then just put that just on there. And then I just gave it one more little touch because I really did think it would make a lovely, it's a lovely thinking of you, missing you card, but it's also a perfect Mother's Day card. And you know, a Mother's Day card just needs some pearls. And these big ones, which sometimes can be a little bit tricky to put on a card, fit just perfect in these flowers for a center. So just add two. Let's do one here. And then one down here. And isn't that pretty? So you still get the hint of it. You don't waste the little piece. It's fun to color. Here's my first one, which actually turned out surprisingly well, except that if you look close, there's some extra added embossing because it was kind of hard to emboss and get the little places where I touched the card. But there you go. So it started out as a stencil and it ended up as something totally different. But if you're struggling right now and the I miss yous are just kind of getting past the point because you sent a couple, then go back and read some of the other sayings. You never know what you might discover. So that's what I have for you today. Everybody have a fabulous Easter. Enjoy it. Hopefully, whether it's on the phone or via Skype or Zoom or somehow, you'll be able to still spend some time with those you love. Have a great day. Bye.